Hello everyone, thank you for being part of the workshop today with us. My name is Sian Armstrong and I am the Lead Associate Practitioner for Mortal Fools, and I'll be leading today's workshop with the help of our Mortal Fools Youth Ambassadors, Eliza, going to give us away, and Scott as well. Great. I'd also like to introduce Danny, who will be our tech support today, and who will be on hand for anyone who might have any tech problems. Just message her privately and she'll be able to help. If you have any questions at any point during the workshop for us, please either just say my name out loud, don't be worried about interrupting me, or you can send any messages to myself or Danny privately in the chat box if you prefer. You will need something to write on for this workshop. If you haven't already, please feel free now to grab something if you need to. Okay, and then one last technical thing is today's workshop is going to heavily focus on connecting with each other. So we do encourage that you have your cameras on. But if you're more comfortable with your cameras off, that's absolutely fine, don't worry. We just ask that you respond and interact with the tasks we have by using the reactions option at the bottom of your screen. Brilliant, okay. So who are we? Mortal Fools are a theatre, drama and creative learning company based in Northumberland. We create compelling, dynamic and socially engaged theatre with professional artists working as co-creators with children, young people and communities. Today's workshop is going to involve information about how we've continued our work with young people and how we've adapted as a company to the COVID-19 crisis. It's going to include games and activities that we'd like you to take part in that have helped us as a company through this process, with reference of how these might help you and how you might tailor them to your work as well. And then lastly, we're going to have reflections from Eliza and Scott on why connecting with others and being creative has been important for them during this time. So when planning for this session, Eliza and Scott identified 3 key components that have been vital to them during their last 7 months working with us. And they are.
So the first one is to connect, and we like connecting with each other in quite fun and often silly ways. And this is usually through games and creative tasks. And this is what leads to us all building a strong bond.
The second is create. The process of creating something in a collaborative way, using the connections we've built to create something together.
And the third one is communicate. And this part of the process is about giving ourselves time to think, listen, and understand what we want to say as a collective.
So these 3 components will be what underpin the tasks and activities that we explore with you today. So let's get started then on exploring connect. We're going to explore connect through a game called Anyone Who. And Eliza and Scott are going to explain how it's going to work for us.
Hello everyone. So this game, using this game, we have found a powerful tool in helping connect with each other and also having fun, and it's quite engaging. And this also just overall helps to open a conversation. So how it works is we're going to say a series of prompt sentences all connected to a theme. And our theme for today is things we might have done throughout lockdown. And Scott is now going to get us started by giving an example of the rules for this game.
Okay, so can I have everyone cover their cameras like this? I'm going to say a prompt, and if it applies to you, you take your finger off your camera. First off, I'm going to say a prompt that applies to everyone, just so you have an idea of how the game works. Anyone who is currently in a Zoom call right now. See, brilliant. Honestly, that's brilliant. All right. Now I'm going to say a prompt that doesn't apply to anyone. So for this prompt, you should not take your finger off your camera. Right, fingers back on cameras. Anyone who is currently on Mars. So let's have a check. Yes, brilliant. So just a reminder, if the prompt applies to you, take your finger off. But if it doesn't, keep it on. Now let's be for real. Anyone who has taken up a new creative hobby during lockdown. Okay, fingers back on cameras for all those who've taken it off. Anyone who's attempted baking. Brilliant, fingers back on. Anyone who watched something online that they never would have been able to see live. Great, I think you know the drill now. Fingers back on cameras. Anyone who started and finished watching a new series in lockdown. All right, last one, so fingers back on cameras. Anyone who worked in their pajamas. Brilliant. Okay, everyone can take their fingers off their cameras now. Okay, thank you everyone. We'll leave it there now. We've got to know each other a bit more. Eliza's going to talk to us about why connecting with others has been so important to her during this time.
Youth theatre has been a really important outlet for me to connect with others during this time, because it's a time where we all need to be proactive in our communication with other people. I've learned how to ask for support or just to have a chat during a time where doing that sometimes isn't allowed under certain circumstances. The reason I've continued to do youth theatre is because it helps me understand other people's ideas in a respectful way, and it builds my resilience. When I first joined Mortal Fools Youth Theatre, I was fearful of other people, but being able to build my confidence by meeting new people and connecting with people has taught me it's going to be okay and that we are all in this together. I'd like to share with you now a short extract from our audio piece, When the World is Loud, and I think it just shows that feeling of performing together even though we're all apart.
And suddenly we're dancing, totally carefree. Come on, shoot for the stars! And we're there together.
In an ocean of calm.
A deserted island.
In the countryside, far away from society. With that tingly feeling of wet grass on your feet.
The hot sun on your back whilst you take a dip.
The soft, fluffy nudge of a wet nose wanting to snuggle in. The waves softly crash against your fingertips.
Thank you, great. Okay, so now we're going to move on to exploring our second component, create. When lockdown hit in March, we committed to providing our young people with an outlet to explore their thoughts and feelings, be creative, and still be able to connect with their friends. We moved our youth theatre online, and we embarked on 3 completely brand new projects.
First one is the coronavirus time capsule. a worldwide project led by Company 3, involving weekly films made by young people inspired by themes important to them during that time.
The second, What the World Needs Now. This was a filmed-based gift to the world in the form of a good news report, and it was created and devised by children in school years 3 to 6 through weekly online workshops.
And When the World is Loud, and this is an original audio theatre experience, and the focus of this was to support young people's well-being during lockdown. And as young people, we worked as creators, ambassadors and research assistants alongside our team of practitioners, and this kind of helped us get the most out of the project.
So we're going to share an activity with you now. It's called Lists, and it involves working in smaller groups. And this task we often use at the start of our creative processes, as it's a really useful tool in helping young people build and grow their ideas together. Soon we will break off into breakout rooms, and don't worry if you've never done that before or never been into one. What will happen is Danny will allocate those for us, and a little invitation will pop up on your screen, and all you need to do is click join when you're ready. In your breakout rooms, you won't be alone. You'll either be with myself, Eliza or Scott, and as a group we'd like you to create a list, and that list is going to be in response to a prompt that we're going to give you. So for example, your prompt might be
things you see on social media, and your list might include
celebrities and their cats,
people in Halloween costumes,
political adverts,
a rant from an angry person on Facebook.
Okay, and then we're going to give you 5 minutes in your breakout rooms, and then we'll come back to the main space here where we'll hear some of the lists that we've each created and each group has made. If you have any questions, then please ask your facilitator once we get into the room together. Okay, have fun. Danny, we're ready when you are. Welcome back, everyone. I think that's everyone, isn't it? Yeah, great. Thanks, Danny. Brill, I hope you had some fun conversations with your lists now. So now I'd like to encourage active listening. And what's going to happen is we're going to hear from each group's responses, the 2 examples that you've had some time to share in your breakout rooms. And we're going to do that by your facilitator just saying aloud your name, and then if you just want to unmute yourself and share just the 2 responses that you had. And to encourage active listening, as an extra task, we would like you to try and guess what other groups' prompts might have been from the lists that they share, from the responses that you hear. Okay, is there any questions before we get started? All good. Great. All right then, so Scott, can we go with your group first, please?
Yeah, sure. Yeah, sure. Can I have Jamie first, just to say his two things from his list?
So I've got social gatherings such as skate parks and also volunteering at local food banks.
Brilliant. Can I have Claire next, please?
Yeah, so mine were volunteering at a local rugby club to carry out activities like bag packing to raise money for the club and planting trees to support the environment. and the other one was children, young people coming out with families on a Thursday for Clap for Carers during the lockdown.
Brilliant. And finally, can I have David?
Yeah, I only had the one. I just said protest because I think I've possibly got COVID-19. So I'm going for a test directly after this. So I'm fuzzy-headed. But that's all I said.
Great, thank you everyone. Good luck with that, David. Fingers crossed for you. Well, that was everyone in your group, wasn't it, Scott? So if now we've heard the responses, is there anyone that has any guesses of what their prompt was or might have been? And just you can shout out loud or write it in the chat. Claire, yeah?
And was it, how can young people make a positive contribution to the community during lockdown?
That's actually very close. Very, very close.
Cool.
Not quite, but very, very close.
Nice prompt.
Is there any, because it's about the word, isn't it? So what is it that they're contributing to? That's a little hint. Anyone else got any guesses?
Community, contribution to the community.
Yeah. Yeah, great. Well, thank you, that group. Some really brilliant contributions to the community.
I think Claire said community. I'm going to give Claire credit there because I think you said community, didn't you, Claire?
Oh, did you? Oh, Claire, I'm sorry. I missed that. Yeah, you're winning. You're winning. Brill. Okay, then we'll move on to Eliza's group now.
Right. So, Naomi, do you want to go first?
Yeah. So I said a safe environment and a place where young people listen to and respect each other.
And Sue?
Spacious and colourful.
And finally, Helen.
Fun, creative tasks and music and biscuits.
And that was what we got from our lists.
Ah, some lovely things. I like colourful. That's so important. Any guesses from anyone that of the prompt? What that might have been? No.
What sort of venue would young people like to do creative activities in? Something like that.
Yeah, I think that's pretty much what we have. Should I just say it?
Liza, yeah.
Well, now, our prompt was, what makes a good creative space for young people?
Yeah, brilliant. So I guess, it's like venue. It could be venue, but then the space could be anywhere, couldn't it? Real. Great. All right then. Last up is my group. So can we start? Maisie, can we start with yours?
Yeah, so mine was collective creative writing, so a story or a piece of drama.
Claire?
Mine was a meme or a letter to a prominent person.
Charlotte?
And mine was collaborative poetry through song.
And then Rachel?
Mine was a large-scale collaborative drawing.
There we go. That's what we came up with. Any guesses? What might have our prompt been?
Is it something to do with creative ways to engage, to share a message?
Very close. Very close. Do you know what? I feel like that is it. It's just the different ways of wording it. Our prompt was, I'm going to get the wording up exactly. What can young people co-create together and how can they share it? So yeah, the message, it is the message, isn't it? I'm going to give you it, Claire. Great. Thank you, everyone. This is it's so nice to just hear your voices and get your contributions on those topics, because they can be interpreted in so many different ways. We'd like to encourage you to think of how you could tailor lists to work in your particular practice.
Because it's useful for group work because it caters to different people's preferences. So it offers introverts time to reflect on their thinking, but it also offers extroverts an opportunity to talk about their ideas out loud.
In a drama context, lists help us when devising scripts, when writing a performance material. But this is tailored to any practice.
Yeah, so for example, for a museum setting, your list might be asking people to find a variety of different objects, for instance, and then creating something from that. Your list could be in a visual art context, it could be speed drawings or doodles. So lists essentially is a way of generating an initial creative response to a topic or a theme that can be later developed into an artistic piece of material. So you're generating, basically. I'm going to pass you on to Scott now, who is going to offer some of his reflections on why staying creative was so important for him during lockdown.
It's been important to have a creative outlet during this time because it means I don't get wrapped up in the soap drama of British politics and British news and become lethargic, overstressed, and paranoid. It means I can adapt to this new normal and work much harder and smarter. It's given me the responsibility that I could make other people feel less trapped. And it gives me hope that I can mold the future into something better than it is now. I'm going to share a short video with you now that one of our youth theatre groups made for our coronavirus time capsule. This is an example of how we were able to express our feelings on bigger issues, but keep it fun and creative.
I think one of the main things about the coronavirus is the lack of people. There's no cars driving down the road, there's no people in the park, and there's no cars in the car park.
Will the lack of cars on our main roads have a positive effect on the environment?
Lockdown has decreased climate change. This is greatly due to the reduced amount of flights in the air and the reduced amount of car journeys that people are taking.
Missy, answer me. When are the restrictions going to be taken off? Missy, do you know when I'm going to be back at school? What are you going to do about the key workers? When are their supplies going to get here? Are people immune to the virus once they've had it?
When will schools reopen?
Great. Oh, love Missy. I love seeing Missy. Great, thank you. Brill. Okay, well, now we're on to our final, exploring our final key component, which is communicate. And we're going to explore this through free writing, what we call free writing. Free writing is a really useful way of getting your thoughts down on paper about a particular topic or theme, anything really, in a completely uncensored and non-critical way. The result of this task will hopefully offer you a useful takeaway when thinking about the aims and dreams you have for your company or whoever you are representing today, and what you can offer young people through your particular practice at this time. So step one is the prompt. So I'd like everyone to start by writing on their piece of paper, just whatever you've got to write with. your first few words. Imagine if young people, ... Imagine if young people. Great. Once you've got that, I'd now like everyone to free write in response to this beginning of a sentence, with whatever comes to your head. Before you start writing, you might want to think about what you and your company could achieve for young people. So this might be things you'd like to create with them. We've talked about that a bit already. And maybe it's people or groups you'd like to connect with in some way. This can be short-term thinking or long-term. It can be small dreams or big dreams that you have. It's just whatever you've got in your mind. Imagine if young people. And I'm going to give you 2 minutes. In fact, because we've got time, I'm going to give you a bit longer, 3 minutes. 3 minutes. And your aim for free writing, it's important to say, is to just keep writing without stopping for this full allotted time. So your hands might hurt a bit, but try and push through it, okay? And we'll just keep going until those 3 minutes are up. Any questions before we get started, before I pop the timer on? Brilliant. Okay then. So I'm going to start the timer. 3 minutes from now. Got about 30 seconds left to finish any thoughts. Okay, that's time up. So just finish off where you are. Don't worry if it's not fully formed or fully finished. And give your hand a shake if you need to, or a stretch. Okay, great. So I'm going to give everyone now 30 seconds, maybe a little longer, to read through what you've written down. And I'd like you to underline now any sentences, any words that really feel important to you, that feel the most important to you in this current moment, this morning. It might change tomorrow, it might change later this afternoon, but just now, right now, underline what feels the most important. Okay, I'll give you that time now.
Okay. Once you have your sentence underlined, we'd like you to share your sentence by writing it in the chat box. We often do this in our free writing as it helps give an insight into how people are feeling about a particular topic in a non-pressure way. We won't read these aloud, but we would like to give everyone a bit of time to read other people's responses together.
I'm going to give us some more time to just read through these responses now. I would like to invite and encourage you to, if you feel like you respond to something that's been added and have something to say or a response that you'd like to add to anything, then please feel free to unmute yourself and share your thoughts.
Sian, I'd like to respond to Claire's comment, if that's all right.
Yeah, brilliant.
I just found it really interesting, Claire, what you said about like young people having a greater say in how they learn at school. And if it's all right, Eliza and Scott, I'd like to just invite you to comment on that, just because just before lockdown hit in March, we'd spent 6 months making a play all about that. And it was due to tour, and then the tour got cancelled. So I just wondered whether Eliza or Scott, you might want to just like say a brief thing about what we found when we made that play, Relentless.
I think like definitely I really like the idea of like having a differently structured day in school and like having more of a say about it. I think what's really nice about things like this is we can all sort of come together and share ideas and, you know, like free speech. And I think part of the reason why it's so important is because it kind of starts that initiative to change the policies that are in place that are like keeping school days like that and keeping us from learning things that are outside of what we are already being educated on in school. So I think that's part of what we sort of said in Relentless, which is the play we were going to do. But yeah, I really like that.
Helen, will that still happen? Will it still be released?
So we recorded a version of it, a kind of rehearsed version, on the Thursday before schools closed. So that is something we're not quite sure what we're going to do with that yet. But if that's something you'd be interested in watching, like you can get in touch with us afterward and get your details and stuff, and I'm sure we could like make that available to share. At the moment, we're working with our young company, which Eliza and Scott are in, to look at actually what we want to create now. And the thing that's been really interesting is the young people have said some of the stuff in that play, they've gone, there's more important things we want to talk about now. But I think what we're probably going to end up doing is taking some of the themes that are still relevant and then maybe adding some new stuff to it and almost making like a new creative response to that. But we can certainly share like some of the script and that recording with you if that would be useful, because there's a lot in there about how our young people responded to that theme.
It sounds brilliant, and in some respects, even if they do feel it's a bit dated, it would still do the job, which is to inspire people to think differently.
Yeah,
so it would still do that. So it sounds good.
I think that's a really important part of all the work we've been making, is it all has a really strong purpose. And I've noticed, like from some of the things that were in the chat there, I think being very clear that we make work with our young people that has a purpose to change something in the world. And during lockdown, that was even more important to them, because a lot of them reflected that they felt no one was listening to them, that they were just kind of having things done to them rather than with them. So the work that we created in lockdown, the time capsule and the When the World is Loud, was definitely a way for young people to contribute to society and to make a contribution at this time to try and improve things for other people.
Yeah, thank you.
Okay, just thinking about time and wanting to make sure there's enough time for any questions. We're gonna move on, and we wanted to end with a quick performance from Eliza and Scott, based on their response to this Imagine If free writing task. So we're just gonna quickly listen to that now.
Imagine if young people were encouraged to embrace the arts.
Imagine if young people weren't discouraged from expressing themselves.
Imagine if young people were no longer told one way of thinking was the right way.
Imagine if young people weren't shown through social media that what they want to do simply isn't viable.
Imagine if we were all taught to embrace the arts, not just consume what they can provide.
Imagine where we'd be and what future we would find.
Thank you, Eliza and Scott. So that was an example there of in a drama context, usually with free writing, we get our young people to find ways of sharing their free writing aloud in a performance, in a way of expressing them aloud. So it's the last 10 minutes, and just based on the contributions you've made to the chat, in response to your free writing, in response to your thoughts, I have seen a lot in terms of, again, with the theme of today, of how we can support young people to understand and share their experiences in these scary times. It was amazing. It's very scary, and yes, it is very scary. And what can we do to support that process? So I'd just like to give you all a bit of time now to have a think of any questions you might have in terms of that process for us, for me, Eliza, or Scott, or Helen, I'll bring you into it, of anything you have after the things that we've shared with you today, or anything else at all about our work and how we have adapted and supported young people. Yeah, have a bit of time now. I'll give you about a minute to think. Okay, just finish a few more seconds. Okay, well, I'll just invite you, anyone that wants to, you can either unmute yourself, or if you prefer, you can write your question in the chat. But we're here, and if you've got any questions, I'm just going to hand it over.
I have a question just about kind of working online and using platforms like Zoom, and kind of how you cope with kind of Zoom fatigue, which I think is a real thing, and how you've kind of worked with that when you're working together online.
I guess we'll all have quite different responses to that, I suppose. I can say that the way, like, communication within the team has been really important. So making sure that if you are working with co-practitioners, for me, being able to establish a way of communicating, and a way of communicating that works for everyone. So some people might feel like, you know, getting things in the chat and getting bombarded with things on the screen can be quite overwhelming. So sometimes just ways of communicating, so even just a difference to that, or an alternative to that, might just be saying, hey, can I just stop you a second? Can I check something with you? And it just helps the process of delivering anything that you have. That's probably the first thing. Yeah, that's the first thing that comes into my mind. Eliza and Scott, have you got any ideas of Zoom? What's helped you with Zoom fatigue?
I think, like, with Zoom fatigue, one of the things I do is I'd go outside, like, actually, because I've got a garden, so, which I thought was like just normal, but it's a luxury actually. So I usually just like try and get some fresh air, and just like, yeah, just, I think that usually helps, because you're not stuck in like a room for all day.
I think I'd say I agree with what Scott's saying about you know, like Zoom fatigue. I think it's such a real thing. Like I remember having like a 2-hour online class recently because my school started trying to do like in and outside, just in case a second lockdown comes around and we get taken out. And it has, but they're keeping us in school. I think I think sometimes on Zoom calls it can feel like really jarring, especially if you're in your first few ones. But for Mortal Fools, we did a lot of skills building at first about I think a lot of the young people, especially like the younger kids and stuff, there was a lot of like, you know, really trying to interact, because it might just be like talking at a screen, but like I think we used to do games and all that sort of stuff. It really helps kind of like be a bit of an icebreaker, even if we already know each other. And that really helps. And they're quite enjoyable because it's a new medium of like working and learning and just having fun. And that really helped.
Helen, is there anything you wanted to add to that?
I think just a couple of things I've heard from our young people in our research group and in our evaluation sessions. One that was absolutely imperative, Scott and Liza, you have both said this, is time for them just in a breakout room when they arrive in the session to chat in the way that they normally would. So, you know, like if you had a session in person, before the session started, all the young people would just like chat and have a bit crack with each other. Like we put them all in a breakout room at the start, so they're not just like sat awkwardly with the practitioners. They can have, it's like a replication of that time just to chat and catch up with each other and not have to do creative work, but just catch up. And then I think the other thing is what they've said in this session, which is chances to co-create. I think quite often when you're working remotely, there's a tendency to do solo work all the time. And when we first did Coronavirus Time Capsule, the point of it was that all the videos were meant to be like solo videos that each young person made independently. But then I think there was one week where Scott made a video with two of his peers in a car, and they all filmed each other separately in a car, so that when they edited together, it looked like it was all one script, and they'd work together over Instagram Messenger and stuff to make it happen. So any opportunities to co-create, even when you're remote.
Thank you. Hope that's been helpful, Maisie. We did have a question from Claire in the chat. It's for Eliza and Scott, this one. What would you say to a head teacher who doesn't promote the creative arts in school? I'm excited.
It's got to be polite, guys.
Who's going to take it first?
I mean, I'm currently in college, so and at college they do promote it quite a lot. Like there's a lot on like their Instagram and things like that. But in terms of my high school, I'm not too sure. We actually did. Interestingly, my head teacher, I think, was at the time was quite into like exploring the arts. I think she was originally a drama teacher, so she was very much into that. But let's say hypothetically, I'd just try and show like what young people can do, because I think that's what is the most impactful. Like devise a show or do a workshop or something like that, because then the head teacher can actually see the impact and see how useful it is.
Yeah, at my school where I go, I started sixth form this September. But from what I know, from my experience, I'm really privileged to go to a school that like really supports the creative arts and has an art department that's like really supportive of like the students' well-being and what they do. And same with Scott, my head teacher was like he used to be a drama teacher and an English teacher, so he was very supportive of what young people can make. But I think the first thing that kind of comes to mind when, like, hypothetically, if you could talk to a head teacher that wouldn't promote creative arts, and it probably won't be in a high school, but nativity plays that they put on every year for young children, where we've got it happens every year in like schools across the country, and that uses the creative arts. You're putting children in a piece of drama that reenacts a famous story. And you're using poster paint to make a set, you're having kids make costumes and reenact lines. It's like it's an integral part of growing up to be making things. I remember my mum used to let me draw on the walls, and like when I was a kid, when I'd have tantrums, and I remember just doing that, and it was like, I've got goldfish paint on my wall in the background, so stuck. But I think it's so important for kids to be able to express themselves, and I think such a massive part of that is art and sports, and I think to an extent sports are creative, and it's so, I think, to sit down with someone who runs a school and who doesn't support that, it's like, why? There's a very binary aspect to STEM subjects, and with maths it's always one right answer, but I think it's so different with things like even English and art and drama. You are presented with something where it's a subjective answer, there's no right answer, and that's what's nice about it, and it's so empowering to be part of. So I think that's what I would say. Okay.
Thank you, Eliza. Just to finish, we did see a lot as well in the chat about well-being actually, and how well-being and work that we do really connects to that and really supports that. And that is one of our biggest aims with Mortal Fools, especially now. And I just want to hand over to Helen to talk a bit more about that, because it's been something that she's explored a lot with our older members.
I just thought it might be useful in response to Claire's comment, but actually generally, just to say we've done a lot of work to properly evidence and measure how particularly theatre and drama and creativity has a positive impact on mental health and well-being. We've been successful in the last year to receive a decent amount of funding from Public Health, because we were able to provide them with evidence, hard evidence, to go look at this change that has happened. And I think that is something that's really integral, especially when working with senior leadership, whether that's in a school or in an organisation or with a funder. I think we all need to do better when it comes to evidence in this stuff, because we all know that theatre and art and creativity is good for well-being. But it's not enough anymore just to say, oh, of course it's good for well-being. Actually, we need to prove it. We've been working with a couple of models. We've used the NHS 5 Steps to Wellbeing, which really informed our piece When the World is Loud over the summer. That's designed to bring hope and community to people's lives and increase wellbeing and get them outside. But we also use a framework called the PERMA framework, which is PERMA. That's a wellbeing framework, and it aligns perfectly, I think, with creative projects, because the A in PERMA is achievement and the M is meaning. The P is positive emotion, the E is engagement, and the R is relationships. All of those things contribute to well-being. The reason I like that model is because meaning and achievement are in there. So it's not just doing the nice workshops, but it's making something together, achieving something together, sharing it with the world, and making change, which is what we're all about with our work with young people. So we've actually developed a few tools to use the PERMA framework with young people. We have a voting system at the end of sessions and things like that. So I'm really happy to share the tools that we've made, and I would really encourage you to look at PERMA, because I found it incredibly useful when evaluating our work. And Scott and Eliza have both reflected brilliant things about mental health and wellbeing before in the past. So it's really great when the young people's voices kind of underpin that as well.
Thank you, Ellen. Great. I think we are at 11:04, but I guess I just want to say, yeah, I hope that today has been helpful for you. I hope it's given you a lot to reflect and aims to think about. And if anyone has another question now, please, I feel happy to stay a little bit longer to talk about that. But if not, then I wish you all the best with all your work. And as Helen has said, we are here, so please do contact us. We're happy to share our contact details. Helen's just added the link to some of to When the World is Loud. Yeah, actually, I would definitely encourage people to listen to that if you you need just some time, like Scott says, out in your garden, then do please give that a listen as well. Thank you, everyone.